Sorry, my phone won. But anyway, back to what I was saying. You're gonna have an order. Order comes from order. Chaos comes from chaos. So if order begets order and chaos begets chaos, where does that order come from? Order doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It takes something orderly to create an order, right? I mean, just look at the way society is set up. Human beings are constantly bringing about order to the world. Conscious beings are constantly bringing about an order to existence. And if you remove conscious beings, then there would be just chaos on earth. So it goes back to that passage in Genesis where God is creating the world, and God says, "Let us make man in our image." And he gave mankind dominion over earth, and basically gave them the same ability that God himself had, and that was to control the chaos, to bring about order, right? And he brought about order to existence, to the universe, to reality itself, and then he gave mankind that same ability, right? And that's what we're doing on earth, constantly making things better, constantly, creating a better heaven on earth. So, anyway, not to get super religious, but I'm just saying that, like, that's why I believe in intelligent design is just because if it wasn't intelligent and existence was chaotic, then we would be chaotic. We would be like X-Men. We would be like mutants, or just it wouldn't be systematic. But the very fact that our existence is systematic, and that we have two genders, we have two sexes, for example, it just seems to me that that was created by something intelligent and not chaotic, like a Big Bang or something. And if the Big Bang is true, okay, well, what caused the Big Bang? You know what I mean? So, all right. Anyway, there's that. So, back to what I was saying. Why does God allow bad things to happen? And it took me a while to figure this out. Um, and I think about this a lot. I think about things like this a lot. And honestly, I think that um, it's like, okay, so an abstraction, an analogy. It's like, it's like timelines. So imagine you live your life, I live my life, and when we live our lives, there are timelines. So like, there's a timeline of me when I was young, and then there's a timeline of me now in the present, and then there's a timeline of me in the future. And I can see, well, no, this supreme being known as God or a creator can see all these timelines. So he can see the past, he can see what's now, and he can see the future at all times. And so all of these timelines are like different days I live, and all these different days are different me's that exist in different times. But they all exist simultaneously. It's like a television, like different trillions of televisions, right? And all these televisions have me doing something different on a different day. And depending on the choices I make, I could change my fate to one of these timelines going on simultaneously. Because they're all happening, but they're all could be different. So for example, this is a theory, but I'm not saying this is true. I could be living, there could be tons of different me's existing in different timelines in a different universe entirely, doing similar things or different things, right? Depending on the choices I make. And so this divine entity can see all the possible futures, all the possible fates of reality for my life, and could actually influence my life in such a way where he would make one of these realities come to pass, right? Because he can see my future, he can see my past, and he can see my present, and he can dictate where he wants me to go, right? Because he has all these televisions, trillions of televisions that where he can see my future, basically. He can see my life, and he can see what I could do, what I might do, what's possible. But if you think about it, you know, if a being was that powerful and he could just influence reality to be whatever he wanted it to be, what's the point in life? The point of life, part of life, what's life is having a choice, our ability to choose. Part of life is having free will. And I don't subscribe to Sam Harris's, whole argument that free will doesn't exist. He has this argument that, well, there is no free will because we're basically, subject to our biological needs. We have to meet our biological needs, and we can't overcome our biological needs. And in a way, yeah, that's true. Everything is kind of cause and effect in that way, but you still have a choice in how you meet your biological needs. Like if I get hungry, I can choose not to eat. Like for example, I have this Starbucks coffee. I could personally choose not to drink this Starbucks coffee, or I can choose to drink it. Right? That's a choice. So while Sam Harris may be correct in saying we don't have absolute free will, we do have a measure of free will. And that's true. We do have a measure of free will because we have a choice in how we meet our biological needs, and we have a choice on how we could possibly transcend them like we have in the past. Well, we've transcended our limitations at least in the past, and we continue to do that over and over and over again. So that's our agency, and that's part of life. All life forms have this ability to some capacity, human beings especially, right? So uh, if we remove that and we have a being that can control fate at will and influence my life at every turn, so that I never really had a choice. I was only being guided by this entity. So I never made any mistakes. I simply lived my life. Basically, this being planned my life for me. I never had a choice. Nothing I did mattered because my fate was already determined. Well, that's not free will. That's not living. That's not life. That's just an existence that's predestined for you, right? Nothing you does matter. Why do anything at that point? So perhaps a being like God really does exist, but perhaps he doesn't allow himself to control mankind because he wants mankind to choose for themselves. Because as we go to Genesis, God gave mankind the ability to choose. God made mankind in his image. If God made mankind in his image, don't you think he's going to allow mankind to act sovereignly on their own accord and handle things on their own? Of course. So perhaps the reason why God doesn't intervene when these natural disasters happen, when people get sick and die, just when terrible things happen, is because he wants us to figure it out on our own. Like for example, like when the school shooting happens, right? And people die, people start dying. What are you going to do about it? What choice are you going to take to counter the choices of other human beings, right? What are you going to do to solve the crisis of life? And this is what God, and this is our theoretical, but this is why I think if there is such a being, such as a creator, or a divine entity, the reason why he doesn't intervene sovereignly is because he wants human beings to live life for themselves. And isn't that what most people want? Because if everything's perfect, why why would you want to do anything, right? Part of life is, trials and obstacles and progressing through life and going through difficulties and overcoming those difficulties. Part of life, the main focus of life, is to bring order to chaos, to find the chaos and to bring an order to it, right? And we constantly do that throughout society. I mean, you just go back 200 years, we have better medicine, people are living longer. We have electricity now. We didn't have electricity before. Things are better, and they're constantly getting better. God only knows what the next 300 years are going to look like, right? So things are constantly improving, and it's mankind's ability to bring order to the world, order to chaos. And so if we remove mankind's free agency, if we remove mankind's agency, we remove mankind's choice, then God would have absolute control over what we do. We would be robots, and we would have no control over our own fate. But I think that God allows himself to influence us, but not control us. So maybe there's this divine entity that influences us to take certain directions in life because he knows, because he's looking at these TV screens and he knows, well, if he does this, then this will happen. And that'll give him a better future. So let me do this. And that leads me to my next point. Do you believe that an entity like this of God is evil? Because there's this argument, well, if God is all powerful, he can't be all good. I don't believe that if there is a God, I don't believe he's an evil entity. I don't believe he's evil because, like I said, everything, though, like just going back to the solar system example, the way our planet is orbits around the sun, right? It orbits around the sun for life on Earth, for the benefit of life on Earth, right? It's systematic, and it has intent and it has purpose, and it's meaningful as a result. So I don't believe that God is a God or a divine entity is evil in any way, or a creator is evil because I think like I don't think it's out to destroy us basically. I think they have good intent is what I'm saying. If there is a God, so yeah, and that's why. It's like when you have a pet, for example. You buy the pet a dog house. You make sure they're comfortable. You might buy a little box if you have a cat. You make sure the pet has what they need so they can live. And in a way, that's what's happening on the macro level on Earth, right? There's nature is set up in such a way where we can live on Earth. Why is that? Is it just a coincidence, or what? So that's where I'm at with it. But in terms of why does God allow bad things to happen to the world, maybe the reason why is because God wants us to do our job and decide what our fate is for ourselves. And to deny us that gift is to deny us life, because then we wouldn't have the freedom to choose for ourselves. We wouldn't have to be the chance to be masters of our own fate, right? Masters over other people's fate based on how our choices affect them, right? And God can see, well, God supposedly, or this creator can see these timelines, and perhaps there is tons of different timelines. Like, so for example, perhaps there's another reality outside of this reality, or another universe outside of this universe where I don't even exist because my parents made different choices and they never met, and say my mother never got married, never met my father, I don't even exist. Or maybe there's timelines where I do exist and I'm doing entirely different things. Like, so maybe I'm doing something different than I'm doing now. Maybe I'm like a real estate agent, or I'm doing, working at Burger King, based on the different timelines. You get the idea. And maybe this divine entity can see all these timelines and can influence your life simultaneously. That's interesting. If that's the case, then do we ever really die? Because if new timelines are being born right now, if the past exists and the present exists and the future exists and they always exist, then in a way you never die, right? Assuming this is accurate. This is all theoretical. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts because I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting thought, and kind of led me to some interesting ideas. So perhaps that's why we don't even know God exists, because maybe if we knew he exists, maybe it would be too much to handle. Um, Maybe he doesn't want to be known. Maybe he wants us to discover who he is for ourselves. And I think that's probably right, because society isn't set up in a way where you just follow some rigid path. It's set up in a way where you kind of choose your own path. There's things out there. There's paths you can take. I mean, you could join the military. There's different restaurants. You could eat at. There's different careers. There's stuff you can do, and you just kind of have to pick. And so maybe that's what a God would want us to do, right? But anyway, it's just theoretical. It's just an idea I wanted to put out there because I thought it was interesting. So I'm just sharing it with YouTube and just putting my voice out there. Um, yeah, that's all I have to say. I mean, if anybody's watching, hope you guys have a good day. And I'm out.